Imagine this. Somewhere in a quiet corner of California, in a sanctuary surrounded by trees and gentle hills, there lived a gorilla unlike any other. Her name was Koko. But Koko wasn't just any gorilla, she talked. Not with words, of course, but with her hands, through American Sign Language. From the time she was a baby, Koko learned to sign over 1,000 words. Words for love, for sadness, for joy, for anger. And she didn't just mimic, she expressed, she comforted, she mourned. Now stop and think for a moment. If a gorilla could tell us what was on her mind, what would she say about us? About humans, about the world we've built, the world we're destroying? One day Koko did just that. During a quiet afternoon with her longtime caretaker, Dr. Penny Patterson, Koko sat watching a television screen. On it played images of war, famine, deforestation, the endless struggles of the human world. And then, without prompting, Koko lifted her hands. She signed, "Bad, sad, people bad, help Earth, fix Earth." The room fell silent. A gorilla looking at the pain we've caused each other, and pleading for us to heal. This wasn't just a moment of mimicry, this was a message. And from that day on, those closest to Koko knew they weren't just studying her. Koko was studying us. And what she saw left her heartbroken. But what's even more shocking is what she said just before she passed away. Stay with me, because you're about to hear a story that will change the way you see animals, the earth, and maybe even yourself. Koko was born on the 4th of July, 1971. A date symbolic of independence, freedom, and the pursuit of something bigger. She came into this world at the San Francisco Zoo, a tiny baby gorilla no one could have imagined would change the way we think about animals forever. By the time she was a year old, Koko had caught the attention of a young psychology student named Penny Patterson. Penny saw something in Koko's eyes, a curiosity, a spark, and Penny had a dream to teach Koko American Sign Language to open a window between two species. At first, the idea was met with skepticism. Could a gorilla truly understand human language? Was this even ethical? But Penny was determined. She began working with Koko every day, using simple signs: food, more, drink, play. To everyone's astonishment, Koko picked them up quickly, and not just by mimicking but by using them in context. Soon, Koko wasn't just asking for bananas or toys, she was sharing emotions. One day, Koko's kitten, a tiny gray ball of fluff she had named All Ball, got loose and ran out of sight. Koko searched, frantically signing, "Where cat? Where cat?" When Penny explained that the kitten was gone, Koko signed sad, cry, frown, and then gently touched her own cheek, the sign for tear. It was in that moment the world saw Koko not as a scientific subject but as someone with feelings, attachments, and heartbreak. But Koko's journey into our world didn't stop there. As she matured, Koko's vocabulary expanded to over 1,000 signs. She could understand roughly 2,000 spoken English words. She told jokes. She invented nicknames. She even made up words when she didn't know the right sign, like calling a ring a finger bracelet. The media quickly caught on. Koko appeared in National Geographic, her photo gracing the cover. A gorilla gently cradling a kitten in her massive hands. Cameras followed her every move. She met celebrities including Robin Williams, with whom she shared an unforgettable moment of laughter. But behind the headlines and magazine covers, something deeper was unfolding. One afternoon, Penny left a television on in Koko's enclosure, a program showing images of war, famine, and environmental destruction. Koko watched in silence, eyes fixed on the screen. Then, without anyone asking, she signed, "Bad, sad, people bad, fix Earth." It wasn't random. When Penny and the team asked Koko what she meant, she added, "Help Earth, hurry." For scientists in the room, it was a moment of both awe and unease. Was Koko merely reacting to emotional cues? Or was she truly perceiving suffering, understanding the bigger picture? What's clear is that Koko cared. She asked for the well-being of her caregivers, sometimes interrupting their conversations with signs like, "You okay?" When visitors were sad, Koko would sign hug. When animals were in distress, she became agitated, signing "help, help." This was no longer about whether a gorilla could be taught to communicate. This was about whether a gorilla could feel, and whether she could hold a mirror up to us and ask the one question we struggle to answer: why do you hurt each other? And perhaps, even more profoundly, why do you hurt the Earth? As word spread, Koko became a symbol, not just of animal intelligence but of interspecies empathy. She wasn't merely a trained ape performing tricks. She was a bridge, a reminder that the line we draw between human and animal might be far thinner than we dare admit. But behind the cameras, behind the headlines, Penny saw something deeper in Koko's gaze. A longing, a silent plea, a desire for a world less cruel, less violent, not just for gorillas but for all living things. Success, as it turned out, came with a price. As Koko's fame grew, so did the scrutiny. News outlets clamored for interviews, television crews lined up for footage, and researchers from around the world debated fiercely over what was really happening inside the mind of this extraordinary gorilla. Some hailed Koko as a breakthrough, proof that animals possess consciousness, empathy, even morality. Others dismissed it all as a clever performance, nothing more than conditioned responses shaped by years of training and reward. Inside the Gorilla Foundation in Woodside, California, Penny Patterson and her team found themselves at the center of a global storm. On one side, they had a gorilla who not only signed words, but combined them in novel ways, expressed sorrow and humor, showed affection, and even grief. On the other side, they faced mounting pressure from the scientific community, who demanded controlled experiments, rigid documentation, and quantifiable data. But Koko was no longer just a research subject, she was family. Penny often spoke of the profound connection she felt with Koko, not just as a scientist but as a friend, almost as a mother. They shared birthdays, celebrated holidays together, and comforted each other during times of loss. And that bond, as beautiful as it was, became a point of contention. Critics argued that Penny was no longer objective, that her deep affection for Koko blurred the lines between observation and projection. The tension reached a boiling point when Koko's health began to decline in her early 30s. A middle-aged gorilla by human standards, but nearing the end of the average lifespan for her species in captivity. Penny noticed something disturbing. Koko was signing less. She became moody, withdrawn. She showed less interest in the toys and activities that once delighted her. Was it just age, or was something else weighing on her? Then came the incident that would shake the entire project to its core. One afternoon, a group of researchers visiting the foundation decided to test Koko's understanding of abstract concepts. They presented her with a series of images, some of happy scenes, others of war, pollution, and suffering. As Koko studied each photo, she was asked to sign her feelings. At first, the exercise went as expected. Koko signed happy at pictures of babies, love at images of animals, sad when shown natural disasters. But when shown a photo of a clear-cut forest, trees felled, land bare and wildlife displaced, Koko stared for a long moment. Then she signed slowly and deliberately, "Trouble, stupid people, fix Earth, hurry." The room fell silent. The visiting scientists were stunned. This wasn't mere labeling, this was judgment. One of the researchers, skeptical, muttered under his breath, "Coincidence." But Penny saw something different. She saw Koko's eyes glisten with something unmistakable, grief. The incident was reported widely, fueling both wonder and backlash. Some hailed it as proof of animal awareness. Others accused the foundation of coaching Koko, of reading too much into random gestures. Suddenly the lines between science, ethics, and emotion blurred. Behind the scenes, Koko was feeling the strain, the constant media attention, the endless stream of visitors, the stress of being both a celebrity and a research subject. It was taking its toll. Penny noticed Koko would sometimes turn away from the cameras, cover her eyes, or sign enough. Go. But perhaps the most heartbreaking sign came late one evening. Penny found Koko sitting alone, cradling one of her kittens. She approached gently and asked, using sign language, "Koko happy?" Koko looked up, paused, and signed, "Koko sad, people stupid, Koko sorry. Sorry." For what? Penny wondered. For the state of the world? For the destruction Koko saw but could not stop? For the pain she sensed in the humans around her? As Koko aged, her signs became fewer, but more profound. She no longer asked only for play or food, she asked for peace, for healing, for a world that was slipping further and further from balance. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, pressure mounted on Penny and the foundation. Funding became uncertain. Critics demanded Koko be placed in a larger zoo facility with other gorillas, arguing that she needed her own kind, not a life surrounded by humans. But Penny knew that Koko was different. Koko had outgrown the boundaries of species. She wasn't just gorilla or human, she was both and neither, a bridge between worlds, and removing her from the only family she had ever known would be a kind of death in itself. And yet, even Penny couldn't deny the toll the years were taking. Koko's health faltered, she began sleeping more, eating less, retreating into long silences. The spark that had once lit up her eyes dimmed. But through it all, she continued to sign one message over and over, sometimes to Penny, sometimes to visiting children, sometimes to the empty air: be good, help Earth, love. The conflict wasn't just between Koko and the world, it was between humanity and itself. Between our endless thirst for knowledge, our hunger for connection, and the price we were willing to pay to bridge the gap between species. For Penny, for Koko, and for the millions who followed their story, the question lingered like a soft echo through the years: can we change? Because if a gorilla could understand, and care, what excuse did we have not to? As the years passed, something remarkable began to happen. A turning point not only in Koko's life, but in how the world saw her. By now, Koko was no longer just a media sensation or a scientific puzzle. She had become a symbol, a living bridge between species, a voice, however limited, from the natural world pleading with humanity to listen. But what no one expected was how deeply Koko herself began to reflect on her own existence. One morning, Penny sat across from Koko, gently brushing the silver hairs that had started to appear around her face. They had been together for over 3 decades, through triumphs and heartbreaks, media frenzies and quiet days of solitude. "Koko, who are you?" Koko paused. Her dark eyes flickered with thought. Then slowly she signed, "Me, Koko, good gorilla, love people." Penny felt her throat tighten. It was the first time Koko had ever described herself in such a complete, deliberate way. Not just a name, not just a label, but an identity. Later that week, another remarkable moment unfolded. A group of schoolchildren had come to visit the foundation. They stood wide-eyed as Koko approached the glass, her massive hands gentle, her eyes kind. Penny asked Koko. Koko looked at the kids, then signed carefully, "Be good, love people, help Earth." The children gasped, some bursting into tears. It was as if a message from another world had been delivered straight into their small, hopeful hearts. News of this interaction spread quickly, reviving interest in Koko's story. Suddenly, the debate was no longer just about whether Koko could understand language, but whether Koko had been trying all along to teach us. And then, the most astonishing event of all took place. It was a quiet evening. Penny sat with Koko, flipping through a book of pictures. Images of forests, oceans, animals, and people. Koko paused on a photo of a devastated rainforest, eyes lingering on the barren land. She signed. Penny, curious, gently asked, "What can people do?" Koko's reply stunned everyone. She signed, "Fix Earth, love Earth, hurry." She then placed her hands over her heart and signed again. For Penny, it was a moment of realization. Koko wasn't just reacting emotionally, she was making a plea for the planet, for its people, for life itself. That moment became a defining turning point. Penny and her team decided to shift the Foundation's mission. No longer just a language study, the Gorilla Foundation became a platform for conservation, education, and global awareness, using Koko's story to inspire action. Koko became a global ambassador. Her image appeared alongside environmental campaigns. Her messages, "Fix Earth, be good, love people," were printed on posters, shared in classrooms, and broadcast on television. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the people who met her face to face. Robin Williams, who visited Koko during a difficult time in his life, later described the encounter as one of the most moving experiences he'd ever had. Koko had made him laugh, had hugged him tightly, and, as Penny recalled, seemed to sense his pain even before he spoke a word. For Penny, this was the moment that everything shifted, when Koko stopped being a subject of study and became a teacher without words, a teacher without borders, a teacher without species. And yet, as Koko's influence grew, so did the urgency. Her health continued to decline. Penny watched with both pride and heartbreak as Koko, even in her final years, continued to send her message to the world. In those moments, Penny often found herself wondering, were we worthy of Koko's trust? Were we listening, or were we simply marveling at her without truly hearing her? The turning point wasn't just in Koko's life, it was in ours. Because now, we had no excuse. We had been spoken to, by a voice we never expected, delivering wisdom we desperately needed. The question was, would we finally act on it? Despite the global adoration and the heartwarming stories, beneath the surface a quiet storm was brewing. Koko was aging, and with age came fragility. By the time she reached her mid-40s, an advanced age for a gorilla, Koko began to withdraw more frequently. She slept longer, her appetite waned, and the once joyful play sessions with her kittens became shorter, more subdued. Penny watched helplessly. For over 4 decades, she and Koko had been companions, collaborators, family. Now she faced the painful reality that Koko's time was running out. But even as her body weakened, Koko's spirit remained luminous. One crisp autumn morning, Penny entered Koko's enclosure to find her sitting quietly, gazing out at the red and gold leaves drifting from the trees. Penny sat beside her and asked, using sign language, "Koko, are you happy today?" Koko turned, her dark eyes soft, and signed, "Happy, but sad." "Why sad?" Koko hesitated, then signed slowly, deliberately, "Earth, people, stupid, hurry." Penny's heart clenched. Here, in the twilight of her life, Koko's message had not changed. If anything, it had sharpened, crystallized into a plea that transcended words or species. She wasn't just talking about herself, she was talking about all of us. But the tension was no longer only internal. Outside the sanctuary, debates raged. Critics argued Koko's life was a spectacle, a distortion of what a gorilla should be. Activists questioned whether she should be living with other gorillas, not among humans. Funding for the foundation became unstable as donors worried about what would happen when Koko was gone. The media, always hungry for a story, began to circle asking hard questions. Was Koko's message being used for human purposes? Were we exploiting the emotions of a gorilla? Was this research or sentimentality? Inside the sanctuary walls, Penny tried to shield Koko from the noise, but even Koko seemed to sense the growing tension. When new faces arrived with cameras or notepads, Koko often turned away, covering her eyes or signing, "No, stop, go." There were days when Penny caught Koko sitting alone, cradling a stuffed toy, rocking gently. Penny would approach and softly ask, "Koko, what's wrong?" And Koko would sign the same haunting phrase, "Koko sad. People stupid, sorry." The most heart-wrenching moment came one stormy night. Thunder rumbled through the hills, lightning crackled across the sky. Penny, worried Koko might be frightened, hurried to check on her. She found Koko sitting in the dark, eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window, the faint glow of moonlight illuminating her silvered face. Penny approached carefully, heart pounding, and asked, "Koko, are you afraid?" Koko turned, reached out a massive hand, and gently touched Penny's face. Then, almost in slow motion, she signed, "Not afraid, sad, earth cry." In that moment, Penny felt something shift. Not just between her and Koko, but deep inside herself. This wasn't the reaction of a frightened animal. This was the mourning of a soul who had spent her life watching, absorbing, understanding, and finally breaking under the weight of it all. As the days passed, Koko's health declined further. Her appetite dwindled, her energy waned. There were fewer playful moments, fewer eager greetings, and yet, in rare flashes, the old Koko would return. One afternoon, a young volunteer brought a newborn kitten to visit. Koko's face lit up, if only briefly. She cradled the tiny creature, gently signing, "Soft, baby, love." For a few precious minutes, the years seemed to melt away. But when the kitten was taken back, Koko sat quietly, hands resting in her lap, and signed, "Goodbye, Miss." Outside, the world continued its chaotic march. Environmental crises, political turmoil, social unrest. Penny wondered, had we learned anything from Koko's life? Had her message penetrated past the headlines and hashtags, into the hearts of those who needed to hear it most? The tension came to a head during what would be one of Koko's final public messages. Penny and her team set up a camera, hoping to capture a short video for an environmental campaign. They signed to Koko asking. Koko paused, closed her eyes for a long moment, then signed, "Fix Earth. Nature hurt. Hurry. Love people. Love Earth." Her hands moved slowly now, each sign deliberate, each gesture heavy with meaning. When the video was released, it swept across the globe. Millions watched, many in tears, as the aging gorilla offered what felt like a final benediction. Schools played the clip for children. Environmental groups used it to rally support. Letters poured in from all corners of the world, thanking Koko for reminding humanity of its better angels. But inside the sanctuary, Penny watched Koko with quiet heartbreak. because she knew. She knew the time was near. Koko, once the playful, mischievous, endlessly curious young gorilla, now moved with the grace and fragility of an old soul preparing to take her leave. And through it all, Penny kept hearing the same words, over and over, like a prayer, like a song, like a farewell. Be good, help Earth, love. The tension wasn't just about losing Koko, it was about the terrifying possibility that we might lose the message with her. Because what good is a voice from another world, if no one is willing to listen? As Koko's final days approached, the atmosphere at the Gorilla Foundation became hushed, almost sacred. Staff and volunteers moved quietly through the sanctuary, whispering updates, preparing meals with extra care, offering gentle touches and soft words whenever they passed Koko's enclosure. Penny stayed close, often sleeping nearby, listening for any sound that might signal Koko needed her. But even in these quiet moments, none of them were prepared for what came next. It was a cold, misty morning. The sun struggled to break through a thick blanket of fog rolling over the hills. Penny entered Koko's room and found her awake, sitting near the window, eyes fixed on the pale gray light outside. Koko turned to Penny, lifted a hand weakly, and signed, "Love." Koko loved Penny. Penny's eyes filled with tears. She knelt beside Koko, holding her massive hand in both of hers, and signed back, "Penny loved Koko, always." They sat in silence for a while. Then, out of the blue, Koko lifted her head and with great effort, began signing a message that left Penny breathless. Koko signed, "Koko good, Koko go." Penny's throat tightened. She asked gently, "Go where, Koko?" Koko looked toward the window again, then signed, "Go Earth, big Earth, goodbye." Penny's hands trembled. This was not a sign they had taught Koko. This was not rehearsed or coached. It was Koko's own way of saying goodbye, not just to Penny, but to the Earth itself. And then came the twist, a moment no one expected, no one could have predicted. Later that day, as the staff gathered to check on Koko, she surprised them all. Weak though she was, Koko insisted, through firm, deliberate signs, that she wanted to see the kittens. They brought them in, tiny and mewing, crawling over each other in a soft basket. Koko's face lit up with an unmistakable joy. She reached out with surprising strength, gently cradling one of the kittens in her massive hands, nuzzling its tiny head. Then, for the first time in days, Koko signed with clarity and vigor, "Love baby, Koko happy, be good, love Earth." Tears welled in the eyes of everyone in the room. Even at the edge of life, Koko wasn't focused on herself. She was focused on love, on kindness, on urging those around her to care for the world she would soon leave behind. That night, Penny sat alone, reflecting on the long journey they had shared, the decades of learning, laughing, grieving, and growing. She realized something profound. The real twist wasn't in Koko's ability to sign or to mimic human words. The real twist was that Koko had become something no one had dared to expect, a moral voice, a messenger, a soul who reminded us that compassion is not bound by species, language, or intellect. It is the universal thread that connects all living things. Koko's life had been a study in communication, but her farewell was a lesson in transcendence. She had crossed the invisible boundary between animal and human, not just with her hands, but with her heart. And in doing so, she left behind a challenge that still echoes today. Will we love the earth as she did? Will we cherish one another as she wished? Or will we let her message fade into memory, just another story lost in the noise of human life? In the days that followed, Koko's room grew quieter. The chatter of visitors fell away, the media calls slowed, and within the Gorilla Foundation, it was as though time had paused, holding its breath. Penny stayed by Koko's side almost constantly. She watched as her beloved companion, the gorilla who had taught the world to see animals as feeling, thinking beings, began to fade. On June 19, 2018, under a pale morning sky, Koko passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 46 years old, a remarkable age for a gorilla, but far more remarkable for the life she had lived. Word of Koko's death spread across the world like wildfire, but perhaps the most extraordinary thing was not how Koko died. it was how she had lived and what she left behind. Koko's message was never complicated, it was never wrapped in scientific jargon or philosophical debate. It was simple, universal, and timeless. Love each other, care for the earth, be kind, and maybe, just maybe, it took a gorilla to remind us of what we so often forget. Penny later reflected in an interview, her voice soft but steady. Koko showed us that empathy doesn't belong to humans alone. She reminded us that the capacity to care, to feel joy, sorrow, love, these are shared across species. The tragedy is that while she learned our language, we have yet to truly learn hers. In classrooms across America, teachers played videos of Koko signing her final messages. Children, wide-eyed, watched as the great ape signed words like, "Help Earth, love people, and be good." Many wrote letters and drew pictures, sending them to the foundation in tribute. For environmental groups, Koko became an enduring symbol of the fragile connection between humans and nature. Campaigns sprang up using her image to advocate for rainforest conservation, wildlife protection, and climate action. But perhaps Koko's most profound legacy was the one she left in the hearts of those who had the privilege to know her, and even those who simply heard her story. She taught us that intelligence is not measured in words, but in understanding. That greatness is not found in dominance but in gentleness. That the truest measure of a life well lived is not how much we have, but how deeply we love. And even now, years after her passing, Koko's presence lingers. In the soft brush of a child's hand on a pet's fur, in the tear shed for a wounded animal, in the quiet, persistent hope that we can do better, be better, love better. In a world so often divided by language, borders, beliefs, Koko bridged the gap with nothing but her hands, her heart, and her unshakable belief in the goodness we are all capable of. And so, we end not with a goodbye, but with the words Koko left us, words that echo through time, through species, through the very fabric of life itself. Be good, love people, help Earth. The question now is simple, and yet profound. Are we ready to listen? If this story touched your heart, share it with someone you love. Leave a comment below. What does Koko's message mean to you? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire, move, and remind us of the beauty in our world.